She stood on the porch, the leash slack in her hand, watching the rental car pull away, a puff of exhaust trailing behind it. Her daughter-in-law, Emily, hadn't even looked back. Just a breezy wave from the passenger seat as David, her son, navigated the turn at the end of the driveway. They were off to Europe, a month-long tour through Italy and Greece, a trip planned for over a year, something Emily had talked about incessantly. And they had left Buster. Buster, the energetic, slightly neurotic terrier mix who needed 3 walks a day, demanded constant attention, and shed enough fur to knit a small sweater daily. He wasn't just staying the weekend, he was staying for the entire month. This wasn't a question, it had been a statement, delivered by Emily less than a week before their departure, squeezed in between complaints about packing and itinerary details. "Mom, just wanted to confirm, Buster will be arriving Tuesday morning," Emily had said on the phone, her voice bright and rushed. "The flight is Wednesday, so David will drop him off before he heads to the office. Don't worry, he has food for a few days and his favorite blanket. We'll be back around the 25th. Thanks so much, you're a lifesaver." A lifesaver. Or perhaps a free, readily available convenience. There had been no discussion of dates, no checking of her own schedule, let alone any offer of compensation for the extensive care of a pet she hadn't agreed to take on. Just a cheerful declaration, assuming her automatic compliance. The familiar knot of resentment, one she usually managed to ignore, began to tighten in her stomach. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe family should protect, not exploit each other. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. Eleanor had always been there for her family. Ever since her husband, Robert, passed away 5 years ago, leaving her comfortably but not extravagantly well off, her life had centered around her children and grandchildren. She'd helped David and Emily with the down payment on their house, funded the grandkids' extracurricular activities, and was always available for last-minute babysitting or errands. She loved them fiercely, and helping them brought her a sense of purpose. But lately, the requests had felt less like asking for help and more like issuing demands, particularly from Emily. It was as if her time, her home, and her resources were simply extensions of theirs, available whenever they saw fit. But leaving Buster without so much as a proper conversation while they jetted off on a lavish European adventure, that felt like a new level of entitlement. What she discovered next would force her to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation. Eleanor lived in the house she and Robert had built 30 years ago, a comfortable 2-story home in a quiet, established neighborhood. It was paid for, her pension from her years as a librarian was steady, and Robert had left her a healthy investment portfolio. She wasn't rich, but she was secure. She had envisioned her retirement filled with gardening, book clubs, maybe some travel. Instead, it had become a revolving door for family needs, especially after the grandchildren arrived. David was a good son, busy with his job, often seeming oblivious to Emily's more demanding tendencies. Emily, a stay-at-home mother, had a knack for making her needs sound like urgent family necessities. Their dog, Buster, had arrived 2 years ago, a fluffy bundle of energy that quickly grew into a demanding member of their family. Emily had always been particular about his care, insisting he couldn't be boarded because he got anxious. This meant either finding a trusted friend or family member to take him in, or someone coming to their house multiple times a day. Given Eleanor lived relatively close and was retired, she had occasionally stepped in, but never for more than a few days. A month was unprecedented, and the casual way it was presented felt deeply disrespectful of her time and freedom. A few days before they left, Emily had sent a curt text listing Buster's feeding schedule and quirks. He needs exactly 15 cups of the salmon kibble morning and night. And oh treats, he has a sensitive stomach. Remember his anxiety vest if there's thunder. And the park on Elm Street is his favorite, make sure you take him there. It was a list of instructions, not suggestions, confirming Emily viewed this as a duty Eleanor was obligated to perform. Eleanor felt a prickle of unease. She wasn't a professional dog sitter. She was their mother and grandmother, someone who should be asked for a favor, not assigned a task. She decided, on impulse, to check her online banking. Everything was in order, but the small act of verifying her account security felt like a necessary, if minor, defensive measure. The morning Emily and David dropped Buster off, it was chaotic. Luggage was piled by the front door, the children were excited and noisy, and Buster was already showing signs of separation anxiety, whining and clinging to David's legs. Emily seemed frazzled, handing Eleanor a small bag of dog food and a worn blanket. "Okay, Mom, he's all yours. His vet is Dr. Miller, cards in the bag. His favorite toys are in there too. Gotta run. The traffic to the airport is a nightmare." There was a hasty hug from David, a wave from the back of the car, and then they were gone, leaving Eleanor standing with a panting, anxious dog, the front door wide open. The silence after the car pulled away was jarring, punctuated only by Buster's confused whines. It struck her then with full force. They hadn't asked her. They had deposited their responsibility with her while they went to enjoy themselves. She felt a profound sense of being used. The initial shock began to give way to hurt, a deep, aching disappointment that her own family would treat her this way. She tried to push the feeling down. Maybe they really were just desperate. Maybe they truly believed she wouldn't mind. She tried to rationalize their actions, to excuse the blatant disregard for her autonomy. But the image of Emily's hurried dismissal, the lack of gratitude or genuine apology for the imposition, stuck in her mind. The first few days with Buster were challenging. He missed his family, pacing and whining. Eleanor, despite her resentment, felt for the dog and did her best to comfort him. She followed Emily's instructions meticulously, walking him, feeding him, trying to engage him. She quickly realized the small bag of food Emily had left would barely last a week. A trip to the pet store was necessary. Standing in the aisle, looking at the price of the specific salmon kibble Buster required, she felt another surge of irritation. Emily hadn't even left enough food for the month, expecting Eleanor to cover the cost. She bought a large bag, the price tag feeling like a small insult added to the injury. Emily texted periodically from Europe. Not to check on Eleanor, but to check on Buster. "How's Buster? Is he eating okay? Did you remember his joint supplement?" Interspersed with photos of picturesque cafes and stunning landscapes. It felt like a deliberate provocation, rubbing her nose in the luxurious trip Eleanor was enabling by sacrificing her own time and energy. One text, accompanied by a photo of Emily sipping wine by the Colosseum, read, "Loving Italy. So relaxing. Hope Buster isn't too much trouble, Mom. You're the best." The casual dismissal of the trouble felt like a slap. Eleanor didn't reply. The feeling of being exploited intensified. She started researching the cost of professional dog boarding or in-home pet sitting for a month. The numbers were staggering, easily thousands of dollars. This was the expense David and Emily had so conveniently offloaded onto her, without a second thought or offer of payment. They were saving a fortune while she was tethered to her house, rearranging her life around Buster's needs. It wasn't just about the money for the food or the inconvenience. It was about the principle, the lack of respect. She confided in her friend, Martha, a sharp-witted retired teacher. Martha listened patiently, her expression growing sterner with each detail. "Eleanor," she said, "when Eleanor finished, they're treating you like free labor. And free accommodation. And expecting you to pay for it. That's not family asking for a favor. That's someone taking advantage." Martha suggested she talk to someone professional, not just about this specific situation, but about protecting herself in general. She mentioned a lawyer she knew who specialized in elder law and family matters. Hesitantly, Eleanor made an appointment. She explained the situation to the lawyer, Ms. Evans, a calm, professional woman who listened without judgment. Ms. Evans confirmed what Eleanor already suspected. She was under no legal obligation to care for the dog, nor was she responsible for the costs associated with its care. Ms. Evans explained that Eleanor had every right to set boundaries regarding her time, her property, and her finances. They discussed various strategies for protecting her assets from future entitlement and ensuring her wishes were respected. It was empowering, but also sobering, to discuss her family's behavior in such stark, legal terms. Ms. Evans's advice wasn't just about the dog. It was about establishing clear boundaries with her adult children. While talking to Ms. Evans, Eleanor mentioned, almost offhandedly, the cost of professional pet care. Ms. Evans nodded. It's substantial. People often don't realize. That's why a good pet sitter or boarder is worth every penny. They provide a professional service. The conversation lingered in Eleanor's mind. The cost of the DL's European trip, the cost of a month of professional dog care. These were significant sums. Sums that Emily and David had effectively shifted onto her or avoided entirely. One evening, while searching for Buster's health records, Emily had mentioned packing them, but Eleanor couldn't find them. She stumbled upon an old email chain open on Emily's forgotten tablet, left on a side table. It was between Emily and a travel agent, discussing the European trip arrangements months ago. Scrolling through, a particular line jumped out at her, and "We'll leave Buster with David's mom, so that saves us a fortune on boarding. She loves having him anyway. She loves having him anyway." The casual arrogance of that statement struck Eleanor like a physical blow. It wasn't a last-minute scramble. It was a calculated decision made months ago, factoring her into their budget as a zero-cost solution. The love was merely a convenient justification for exploitation. This was the smoking gun, the definitive proof that this wasn't an imposition born of desperation, but a deliberate act of using her resources and time for their own financial benefit. The hurt curdled into a quiet, cold anger. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She thought about the years of small sacrifices, the times she'd put her own plans aside, always with the assumption that her family appreciated her. Now she saw it differently. They didn't appreciate her. They expected her to be available, to provide, to be their safety net and their convenience. The phrase, "she loves having him anyway," replayed in her mind, a bitter refrain. She wasn't just a mother or grandmother. She was a resource, a free service provider. But Ms. Evans's words echoed too. She had the right to set boundaries, to protect herself. She had resources, time, and autonomy. Why was she spending her days walking a dog she hadn't agreed to care for, while the people who owned him were exploring ancient ruins and eating gourmet food on her dime, or at least, on the dime they had saved by dumping the dog? An idea began to form, audacious and exhilarating. Eleanor had always dreamed of visiting the Maldives. Robert had promised her they would go someday, but someday never came. She had researched it years ago, fascinated by the turquoise waters and overwater bungalows. She remembered the cost, substantial, but within her means if she chose to spend her money on herself. She opened her laptop. Instead of searching for Buster's anxiety vest, she searched for flights to Malé, for resorts, for travel dates. She looked at packages, comparing prices. She realized that a month-long trip to the Maldives for one person was roughly equivalent to the cost of the European trip Emily and David were taking, plus what a month of professional dog boarding would have cost them. The money they had saved by using her could fund her dream trip. It felt like cosmic justice. Her initial hesitation dissolved, replaced by a steely resolve. She wasn't just going to refuse to be exploited. She was going to reclaim her time and resources in a way that mirrored the scale of their imposition. This wasn't revenge. It was a strategic reallocation of resources previously assumed by others to be perpetually available to them. She wasn't taking their money. She was spending her money on her dream, money she had earned and saved, money they had presumed they could indirectly access by offloading their expenses onto her. She spent the next few days in quiet preparation. While Buster happily chased squirrels in the backyard, Eleanor booked her flights, secured a reservation at a beautiful resort, and arranged for airport transfers. She updated her will and other legal documents with Ms. Evans, ensuring her wishes were erroneously clear. She set up online bill payments and arranged for a trusted neighbor to collect her mail and check on the house exterior. She contacted a highly rated professional pet boarding facility near Emily and David's house and explained the situation, booking Buster a month-long stay starting the day before Emily was due back. She paid for it up front, using her own credit card, but made a note of the exact cost. She packed her bags, not with dog food and anxiety vests, but with sundresses, swimsuits, and books she wanted to read by the ocean. A week before their scheduled return, Emily texted, "Getting so excited to come home. Can't wait to see everyone, especially Buster. Will you be able to drop him off sometime Sunday?" Eleanor paused, formulating her reply carefully. She didn't want a confrontation over text. She wanted it to be clear and unavoidable. She waited until she knew Emily would likely be awake, accounting for the time difference. Then she called. "Hi, Mom, everything okay?" Emily sounded cheerful, perhaps a little tired from travel, completely unaware of the storm brewing. "Emily," Eleanor said, keeping her voice calm and level, "I received your text about dropping Buster off Sunday. I'm afraid that won't be possible." There was a beat of silence. "What? Why not?" "We're arriving Sunday afternoon." "Because," Eleanor continued, choosing her words precisely, "I won't be here. I'm leaving for the Maldives on Saturday morning." The silence on the other end of the line stretched, thick and stunned. Then, Emily's voice, sharp and disbelieving, cut through the quiet. "The Maldives? What are you talking about? You can't go to the Maldives. You have Buster." "I've made arrangements for Buster," Eleanor said. "He'll be staying at the Happy Tales boarding facility near your house. I booked him starting Saturday." "Boarding? But you said you'd watch him." Emily's voice was rising, losing its cheerful pretense and quickly becoming shrill. "You agreed. You can't just leave." "No, Emily," Eleanor corrected gently, but firmly. "You told me you were leaving him. You didn't ask if I was available, if I was willing, or if I had other plans. You simply informed me he would be arriving. You assumed I was free and obligated to care for your dog for a month while you took a luxury vacation you saved money on by using me as free care. That's not fair." "It's just a dog," Emily exclaimed. "You're retired. What else do you have to do?" "We're your family." This was the micro-cameo she had anticipated, the moment the casual entitlement became explicit. "You're retired. What else do you have to do?" As if her life had no value, no purpose, no possibilities other than serving theirs. "My retirement and my time are my own, Emily," Eleanor replied, her voice still steady, betraying none of the quiet triumph she felt. "And caring for Buster for a month was a significant imposition that I did not agree to. I have documented the cost of professional dog care for this duration, which is substantial. Since you neglected to make proper arrangements or offer compensation for my time and resources, I have decided to allocate my resources towards a long-postponed personal goal. The cost of Buster's professional boarding is your responsibility upon your return." You paid for it," Emily stammered, momentarily derailed by the practical implication. "I secured the reservation and paid the deposit to ensure he has a place," Eleanor confirmed. "The remaining balance and any additional fees will be due when you pick him up. I suggest you call them directly to confirm the details and arrange payment." "You can't do this. We're family. What about David? What is he going to say?" Emily sounded desperate now, her voice laced with panic. "I have informed David," Eleanor said, though she had only sent him a brief, factual email CCNG Ms. Evans, stating her travel plans and Buster's alternative arrangements, ensuring there was a legal record. And as for what I can or cannot do, Emily, I have taken legal counsel. I am well within my rights to make my own plans and to refuse unpaid labor. My home and my finances are not your default resources. The line went silent again, but this time Eleanor waited. She could hear Emily breathing heavily, the sound amplified by the transatlantic connection. Finally, Emily hissed, "This is unbelievable. You're choosing a vacation over your own family." "I'm choosing to value my own time and well-being after it was disregarded," Eleanor stated calmly. "Buster is well taken care of at the boarding facility. You need to contact them and arrange to pick him up and settle the bill immediately upon your return Sunday. My flight is Saturday morning. Enjoy the rest of your trip." Eleanor hung up the phone before Emily could respond. Her hand was trembling slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline. She had done it. She hadn't argued or pleaded or tried to explain. She had simply stated the facts and her actions. The next day, Eleanor finished her packing, dropped Buster off at the Happy Tales facility, making sure he was comfortable and leaving extra instructions, and double-checked her security system. Early Saturday morning, she boarded the plane. She turned off her phone as the plane prepared for takeoff, disconnecting herself completely from the predictable fallout. Meanwhile, back home, Emily and David's return was met with a very different reality than they had anticipated. There was no Eleanor waiting, no Buster wagging his tail at the door. Just an empty, quiet house. Frantic calls and texts to Eleanor went unanswered. When they finally, likely in a panic, contacted Happy Tales, they were informed Buster was there, safe and sound, but the boarding fees for the month were substantial and required immediate payment upon pickup. The cost for last-minute, premium boarding was significantly higher than they had probably ever imagined, certainly more than the fortune they thought they had saved. Eleanor spent the next 2 weeks in paradise. She swam in the clear blue ocean, read her books under swaying palm trees, and enjoyed gourmet meals without having to schedule them around Buster's walks. She reflected on her life, her relationships, and the quiet strength she had found. She wasn't a doormat, and she refused to be treated as one any longer. The emails and voicemails that accumulated on her phone were a predictable mix of outrage, accusations, and attempts to guilt-trip her. Emily was furious about the boarding costs and accused Eleanor of being cruel and abandoning them. David's messages were less aggressive, more bewildered and disappointed, clearly caught between his wife and his mother, perhaps beginning to grasp the depth of Emily's miscalculation. Eleanor didn't respond to any of them during her trip. She had made her statement. She had set her boundary. The legal victory was implicit in her freedom and their inconvenience and expense. The family consequences were immediate, a severing of the entitled access they felt they had to her resources and time. When Eleanor returned home, refreshed and resolute, her house was just as she had left it. Quiet. Protected. She didn't rush to contact David or Emily. She unpacked, settled back into her routine, and reviewed the messages and emails with a detached calm. She sent a single, polite email to David and Emily, confirming her safe return and reiterating that future requests for assistance needed to be discussed and agreed upon mutually, with clear terms. She did not mention Buster beyond confirming he had been safely picked up from the facility. Her life was different now. The demands decreased significantly, replaced by a wary distance from Emily. David was hesitant, unsure how to bridge the gap Emily had created. Eleanor didn't chase them. She had drawn a line, not in anger, but in self-respect. She continued her gardening, rejoined her book club, and started planning her next solo trip. The peace she felt was not just from the beautiful memories of the Maldives, but from the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming her autonomy and standing up for herself, proving that her time, her money, and her life were definitively her own. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself.